So that's Rebuttal, and welcome to a quick video. I'm going to do some rebuttal comments to some of the people's statements in my "Is America Becoming Everything That It Fights Against" video. First off, the first most common pronounced statement, and it comes in a sort of wide umbrella. That falls a lot of issues happen to fall under this umbrella. And the first one was the whole WikiLeaks video. People were talking about how, well, they went down to the scene and they found some, like an RPG or something like that, and they found an AK-47 and stuff like that, and the journalist was connected to terrorism, and he shouldn't have been standing so close to those armed people to begin with. So, first off, let's talk about that a little bit. So, apparently, this guy deserved to die just because he was standing close to other people. Are you really gonna pull that one? Because that's a total joke. I'm sorry. To try and justify that just because he happened to be standing close to other people, and therefore because he was standing close to other people, must have been a bad guy. I mean, you can't be that close to other people and not obtain this evilness through osmosis by standing next to them. Sorry guys, really not gonna cut it. You really can't justify something like that just because he happened to be standing close. Like, what if one of those guys just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time? Just happened to wander by and just happened to be standing there. Just happened to be there, no affiliation at all, totally unarmed, didn't know any of these guys, and he gets gunned down anyway. Like, that's not a justification. Just because he happened to be standing close to people who are quote-unquote terrorists. Moving on to that, there are no terrorists in Iraq. There never were any terrorists in Iraq, and Saddam Hussein was never ever a threat to United States security. And I don't know if any of you guys have heard this book or read this book, but there's a great book. It's called The Prosecution of George W. Bush for Murder. And it's written by one of the greatest prosecutors in America. Very, very intelligent, very, very sharp legal mind. Can't pick the name off the top of my head. I'll have to look this up. But basically, he outlines in this book, a strategy about why George W. Bush should be prosecuted for the murder of these American soldiers and these Iraqi citizens, and he comes up with his evidence, and here's the evidence, all laid out very, very well, very, very convincingly, about how Saddam Hussein was never ever a threat to the United States. George Bush knew that he was never ever a threat to the United States, but still he brought the country to war based on a lie. So there are no terrorists in Iraq, and also Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden would have never worked together because their ideas, their religion, and basically everything that you would need to work together on such a complex attack as 9/11 wouldn't have worked out at all, just because they're so far opposed from one another that it just wouldn't have worked. So therefore, Saddam Hussein had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11, and it was not a threat to American security whatsoever. Now, another comment I got a lot. Well, the war in Iraq was a success because we deposed this great dictator and we opposed him from the Iraqi people. Got two things to say to that. One, did the Iraqis ever ask you to come in and depose this dictator, to depose Saddam Hussein from their country? I happened to live in the dorms last semester in my university, and I had the wonderful experience of being able to talk to people all over the world from almost every country you could imagine. And we fortunately there had a large Arab population, people from Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, all over that region, and I had the opportunity to talk to a couple Iraqis about this war. And most of them had deep, seething sort of hatred and resentment for America just because they came in and got their business intermingled in something that wasn't their own. And if the Iraqis didn't want this leader, then the Iraqis would throw him out themselves. They don't need some foreign power coming in and meddling in their affairs, and they don't want some foreign power coming in and meddling in their affairs. Then secondly, let's talk about who built up Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Who put him there? Who gave him the power that he needed and essentially created that monster? It was the Americans. Want to go back and talk about this? Because we can go back all the way to the beginning when Iran used to be run by a guy named Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh, and he was well liked by the Iranian people. However, this is in, I believe, the 50s. However, his foreign policies didn't exactly mix with American foreign policies at that time, so they deposed Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh and inputted a guy called the Shah. And the Shah of Iran was one of the most terrifying leaders the Iranians had ever experienced. He cooked and tortured and terrorized the Iranian people for, until the 70s when he got overthrown by the mullahs. And the Iranians have never really forgotten this, have never really gotten over the fact that the Americans put in this dictator that cooked and tortured and brutalized their people. Then they overthrew him, have the government they have now, the sort of radical Islamist government in the 1970s. And now the Americans needed a new guy in the Middle East. Their previous guy in Iran had been kicked out, needed a new guy. Who's their new guy? Saddam Hussein. Built him up, gave him the weapons, gave him the training to fight Iran in the Iraq-Iran war. And so that's kind of the sort of crux of what's happening in that region. Why Saddam Hussein was in there in the first place, because he essentially built him up into that position. Not to mention the people in these regions are going to be angry at the people who put in other governments into these regions that aren't their own. The Shah was never seen as an Iranian government. Saddam Hussein was never seen as an Iraqi leader. The only government that's really going to be sustainable in that region is a government that comes from the people themselves. And you're not going to do that now that you've deposed Saddam Hussein, because you're forcing some system of government on the Iraqi people. You're going to force a leader on them, and that's not going to be a sustainable kind of government, because the sustainable kind of government has to come from the people in that country themselves, not from anywhere else, not from any other foreign influence. If you really want to have a sustainable government in that region, you're going to have to leave it and let the people create their own kind of government. But that's not going to happen, because Iraq happens to be the same branch of Islam as Iran. So I'm assuming that Americans are fearing that if they have a democratically elected leader, he's going to be the same kind of religious leader as they have in Iran, and then Iraq has become a tool of Iran, and then there'll be this coalition of Islamic states that are going to threaten the West and threaten our security. Sorry. The only way you're going to solve anything in there, the only way anything in there is going to be resolved, is to get out of the region. All these problems, everything that happens in this region is a symptom of American intervention into that region. And let's talk about that for a little bit. Let's talk about that. Because we should sit back and think about why exactly the Americans were a target on 9/11, why they're a target of terrorism. This is something Americans never seem to ask themselves, especially, not the right wing in America. They never seem to sit back and ask themselves, why are we a target of terrorists? And I can hear a lot of people saying, well, we're a target of terrorists because they hate our freedoms, which is a total load. Sorry, that's just a total load of crap, because Canada is not a target of terrorism, and our Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees us just as much rights, if not more freedoms, than the American Bill of Rights. Heck, why isn't Japan a target of terrorism, considering that you build that nation, build that government system in reflection of your own, so therefore the amount of freedoms in Japan would be equal to the amount of freedoms in the United States. If you could quantify such a thing as freedoms, then why isn't Japan being attacked? Because they have just as much freedoms as the United States, and therefore the terrorists would hate their freedoms just as much. But Japan is getting off scot-free, but America isn't. So it has to be a reason outside the freedoms why they're a target of terrorism. And I'll tell you why they're a target of terrorism. Because you're interfering in the region. You're interfering with other people's affairs, other people's livelihood, and they're going to be upset at you for that. They're going to be angry at you for that, and that's something Americans can't seem to wrap their minds around, that people are going to be angry at them when you instill your own foreign policy, instill your own ideals on them, and force them to go in ways they don't want to go. They're going to be angry at you for that, and they're going to lash out. No. Like George was said, the Americans, we were attacked on 9/11 because the terrorists hate our freedoms. Well, I'm sure Osama bin Laden, wherever he might be, is laughing his ass off, because he certainly did a good job in restricting your freedoms, didn't he? He certainly has changed America in a way that I'm sure that he wanted it to be changed. So already you've essentially given the terrorists a victory, because you've changed America. You've changed the way that country operates, and you've changed the freedoms given to individual citizens. And that's why terrorists have already beat you.